autonomy to ensure expedition. Council submitted that impeachment must be concluded without undue delay and the timeline reinforce accountability and good governance. It was their father's position that His Excellency Gachagua received a fair hearing in the Senate as he was represented by counsel throughout. He was cross-examined at the National Assembly and he cross-examined National Assembly witnesses, and he filed witness affidavits on the 12th and 13th of October 2024. They contended that the Senate did not refuse an adjournment, and reasonably, as senior counsel Muite was given from 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. to contact His Excellency Gachagua, that no medical evidence of either a doctor's report or prescription was provided to the Senate, and that the Senate offered to adjourn until Saturday 19th, October 2024 within the constitutional time frame, but this motion failed on a vote. The National Assembly and the clerk submitted further that the decision to proceed in absentia did not violate fair hearing, as His Excellency Gachagua had already filed his evidence and opted out after cross-examining the National Assembly's witnesses. That no new evidence was introduced. All material before the Senate had already been placed before the National Assembly and forwarded to the Speaker, and time allocation was not disproportionate as both parties were accorded equal time. The National Assembly submitted that it also could not call all its witnesses due to time constraints, and that this was a consequence of expedition and not bias. They further submitted that the Senate had no independent duty to conduct public participation, which under Articles 10 and 118 applies primarily to legislative functions. The Senate, when hearing impeachment, acts as a quasi-judicial capacity, not a legislative one, and that public participation occurs at the National Assembly during the initiation stage, not at the Senate at the trial stage. Council submitted that comparative practice in South Africa, USA, and in the USA, Nigeria, and Brazil confirms that the upper house role is adjudicatory, not participatory, and that the court in Mwangaza versus Speaker of the Senate held that public participation in gubernatorial impeachment occurs at the county assembly level, and the same applies in equal measure in this matter. The respondents contended that allegations of bias against the Senate Speaker remained unproven, as a Speaker's role is presiding and procedural, and he has no deliberative vote. That mere coalition membership does not establish bias, and that the petitioners have not pointed to any specific act or omission showing a real possibility of bias. They restated that the test for bias is objective, and the petitioners failed to meet it, as well as in respect of the Senate Speaker. It was the submission of the National Assembly and the clerk that the participation of Honorable Orengo and Honorable Amolo as counsel did not invalidate the proceedings, in that Article 77(1) restricts gainful employment that is inherently incompatible with state office, and that representing a party in proceedings is not such an employment. That any alleged illegality would affect the advocates personally and not the validity of the impeachment process, and that no actual bias or procedural fairness has been shown. They further submitted that the Senate applied the correct standard of proof for impeachment, which is above a balance of probabilities but below beyond reasonable doubt, as set out by the Supreme Court in the Sonko and Wambora cases. The Senate found 5 charges constitutional violations, attacks on judicial independence, ethnic incitement, gross misconduct, and that the evidence was substantial and credible, including His Excellency Gachagua's own public admissions. Learned Counsel submitted and urged that the court should not undertake a merit review of the Senate findings. Counsel reiterated that impeachment does not subvert the sovereign will of the people, as It is not an affront to democracy, but an affirmation of accountability. That the Constitution provides for removal of elected officials for gross misconduct, joint ticket of the President and the Deputy President, constitutional officers with distinct and accountability mechanisms Council gave comparative analysis of the U.S. Vice President resignations while President Nixon remained, and Brazil's President Rousseff's impeachment while Vice President Temer assumed office when they submitted that removal of deputy does not require removal of the principal. They contended that Article 1 applies Article 145 with necessary modifications, and that this acknowledges that distinct offices are not a merger. On the validity of His Excellency Kindiki's nomination, approval, and appointment, the National Assembly